I'm Ken Pennington. No. Ken was supposed to be our moderator today and had emergency at work and was unable to make it, so I'll step in for him. My name is Lisa Rogers. I'm the CIO of Nova Medical Centers. We're occupational medicine clinics, 62 clinics in 5 states. Until next week, and then we're 63 clinics in 5 states. I'll let the rest of the panel introduce themselves.
All right. I don't know what Ken was talking about, because in IT, we never have emergencies, right? Never. It's smooth sailing for us every day. Never see. But anyway, Yedavelli, CIO at LivaNova. We are a med device company. Would like to call ourselves head and heart. That's what we support mainly in the epilepsy area. We do heart-lung machines and all. We have a manufacturing facility here in Houston, but globally, we are in about 100 countries or something today. So I've been with the company for about 9 years now, in the CIO role about 2 years. So.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Alexis Collins. I'm the CIO at Norton Rose Fulbright US. We're a member firm of Norton Rose Fulbright LLP, a global law firm. I am just nearing 2 years in this role after spending most of my career in oil and gas. So this has been a nice change for me, and looking forward to the discussion today.
I'm Joe Carroll. I'm the CIO at Citgo Petroleum. Citgo Petroleum is a downstream oil and gas. It's a refining and marketing company. And I've been there for 28 years, which I think people remind me that that's unusual these days, but it's a great company. I've enjoyed all of my time there. I've been over the IT organization for about 3.5 years.
So we are here to talk about composability in action, but in the spirit of Ken, he always likes to start these discussions off with sort of a lightning round of questions for the panelists. So I'm going to stay true to that. So just real quickly, iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Android.
iPhone. So we're evenly split. Okay. Last movie you watched?
Android. Don't watch movies. I think the last I watched was maybe Breaking Bad series or something.
Okay.
Maverick.
Yeah, I saw that one as well. I'm going to go with the new Downton Abbey movie was one, and it was really good. Really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Last weekend we just rewatched The Green Mile. Very good movie. Yeah. Astros in the World Series, World Champions this year.
Yep.
Hope so.
I'm sorry, what was
Astros in the World Series.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. In fact, my son went out and bought a bunch of furniture, hoping that he's going to win the Mattress Mac. So he's really pulling for him.
I think they'll be in this series. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed they'll win it this year. Reality or hype? Cybersecurity mesh.
I think it's a reality.
It's getting there.
I think it's a reality.
Yeah, I agree. It's getting there. Blockchain in the enterprise.
Hype at this point.
Agree with that.
Yeah, I do as well.
Agree. We're in consensus there. VR and AR in the enterprise.
Reality.
Not so much in the law area. So certainly there are applications. Absolutely.
Yeah, not so much.
Same thing. But I can see in your industry where it might actually have some real benefit. Yeah. Quantum computing.
Reality.
Again, not where I live. So.
I think it's coming. Composability applications.
Reality. It existed before, and it is there today. So absolute reality.
It's absolutely a reality. I think historically, enterprises were more concerned about aligning on one platform, and I think that's changing.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think we're all migrating from the large monolithic ERPs to a different model. that's a little bit more interchangeable in building blocks. So I agree.
In my world, which is healthcare, I think the word is a hype, but the existence of it, the reality of it, has been around for a long time in healthcare. So let's get on with it. So here we go. Gartner says that composability is creating an organization using interchangeable blocks. Go away. There we go. Blocks like technology, mindset, and process. These blocks are like Lego pieces that businesses can easily arrange to fit any situation. Composability lets companies break down monolithic applications into discrete components. So what about y'all? Is that a good definition for you? Do you agree with that definition? Do you have a slightly different one?
Go for it.
I think for me, what it does is allows us to look at bringing in best of breed in various applications and stitch them together rather than making trade-offs and trying to align with one vendor and one platform.
Yeah, and for me, the principles kind of ring home for me: the speed of delivery, the agility, and the modularity. Sometimes when you're putting together these big systems, it takes years to get those implemented, and they're quite expensive. And then leadership through orchestration. I think there's a number of things there when you're talking about the business, but in trying to get all of your business units to come together and understand this concept. But I also think that one of the advantages we had on a technology platform with the large ERPs is the data integration was very tight. As we start to move to these best-of-breed cloud-based solutions and look for technologies to help us exchange all of that data, I think it's going to be very important to us. So I think that orchestration is going to be helpful. Yep.
To me, composability is more of a thought process than whether it's a technology process or anything. It's how you approach. It's that agility mindset, right, that you kind of take, and how you break down your problem into smaller, meaningful solutions to get to what you need. And most of the times, as IT professionals, we always hear, right, someone coming to us and saying, hey, I have the technology solution, can I go implement it? Pause. Let's talk about what is it for? What are you trying to accomplish? Especially in the current world, there are so many options. You can go out there, and does one thing fit better your need than the other? Maybe, maybe not. It all depends on what your need is and how you're approaching it and so on. So to me, that composability is associated with problem solving at a higher level and the thought process and an approach rather than a standardized process or a technology or something. That's how I like to think about it. But of course, all these standards always come into picture at some point or the other. So
I have to agree with that very much. I think it really is kind of an offshoot of the agile mindset that came out of software. And just like composability is coming out of software, it's that idea of breaking things down into smaller parts that makes it easier to manage, easier to implement, easier to maintain. Everything is easier if you're doing it in small pieces. So it's really an expansion in my mind of the agile mindset. And just as it moved from software to the business, so is this. So let's see, specific. So I think you said this already, but why is it important for an organization to have composability architecture?
You want to go for it?
Sure. I think, echoing what Lisa said, just having your organization take kind of bite-sized, if you will, approach to thinking about their business. So, I also agree it's really kind of three things. It's the way we think, it's our business architecture, but then there's a technology component of it as well. So I think, as leaders, we try to bring forward this idea, this concept to our business, they may be already thinking that way. They just don't particularly use this term. I think that a lot of times business units are a bit autonomous and thinking, only of their needs and not, being a part of a greater thing. To me, to use it as an illustration, if we had an orchestra, we'd have a string section and a horn section and a percussion section, and those are kind of the composable blocks. Now then we can call this orchestra together and let everybody play their own song and we get a mess, right? But if we bring a conductor in and try to orchestrate it, then we can get a symphony and then it all works together. So I think it's trying to take those building blocks, integrate them into something that makes some sense. Yeah.
So Alexa, what are some of the challenges when considering a composability framework?
Well, if you think about in the IT organization, right, the biggest challenge, I think, and you said it right, because it has a lot of the agile principles, right? So one of the principles is, how do you get that conductor there? How do you create, these fused teams with the business, right, to really understand what they need, right? Instead of trying to fit what they're doing into systems that we already have. And I think in the past, that's essentially what we did, going back to the ERP days, right? You made this big investment in an ERP, and so you went around to every business and you said, oh, purchasing, you need a PO system. Well, we have it right here. Or you need customer care system. Oh, guess what? We have that too, right? Instead of really listening to what does the business actually want? What are their drivers? Is there a feature set that stands out that's going to really make the difference for them and allow them to differentiate themselves? Or is cost the major driver for them, right? And it may depend. So I think one of the biggest things that we can do as IT professionals is really understand the business, and a key role in the organization is putting in place that IT business partner role, right, for each of the critical functions. So that's one of the key pieces that I'm working on right now.
So if anybody is out here thinking about starting a journey in composability, what would be y'all's advice to them in terms of first steps?
Our attention span has decreased quite a bit, right? So going back to that smaller chunks, we like TikTok videos because it's only 2 minutes. The same way, if we take 3 years to deliver something, it's not sustainable. So from a composability perspective, the key message for me is keep it into a meaningful chunks that can show results, because we all want to see results, but of course the process is key. But keeping it to that meaningful, what is that meaningful chunk? I don't know, but it depends on individual needs. That to me is key in kind of putting that together.
Anybody else? Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, I'm going to echo some of the things that you've said around the agile. I think another piece of it with interchangeable parts is, the whole concept and idea of products, trying to deliver a product that can then be reused in multiple business units. I think that's important. I think for my organization, we're just starting on that journey. We've been on this large ERP platform, and so even our business units, the way they think about their business processes are kind of governed by that. So trying to get them to adjust and think about things in bite-sized chunks, or a product offering that can be delivered and reused in multiple business units. A little bit of a new concept.
One other point.
Go ahead.
Sorry. One other point on that is it's also the environment around us is changing so rapidly that we have to adapt quick. So if you take too long to come to it, it might no longer be relevant, right? We have to be relevant, and the only way we can be relevant is doing things quick and adapting to the change very fast. So,
Which, by the way, also means that you have to look at how big is the system, how big is the investment you're taking on, how long is the contracting period. You've got to work with your vendors on all of these items.
Now, coming from healthcare, and that does not have large ERP systems, I have a slightly different take on it. Interoperability has been a big thing in healthcare for forever. I mean, Epic is really the first one that tried to be the monolithic everything to everybody system, and only the very, very large hospital systems have Epic. Being down in the mid-sized healthcare where I am, each specialty in healthcare has got their own specialized software, but they've all got to play together. And we've got to be able to transfer patients from one place to the other and transfer their records. So the whole concept of interoperability has been huge. You know, it started off with HL7 interfaces that everybody could talk, and then now we've got FHIR integration, which is much faster. And even API. In my last position, we were put in a system called Athena, which is probably the largest one for retail clinics. And they have an entire marketplace of vendors that they've got APIs written to. And so you need something specific for faxing, they've got that. They've got probably a handful of them. You want something for pharmacy, they've got a handful of those. You want something, and so the whole idea of being able to pull your system together from these various building blocks has been kind of key to healthcare. So as I was reading about the composability, and I said, yeah, healthcare's been doing that for a long time because one size does not fit all. ERP systems don't exist in healthcare in the same way. So I think, and now we're seeing that playing out in the rest of the businesses for all the reasons we talked about. But it's just being able to quickly integrate all of these systems. And I think the whole API structure and the idea of a marketplace. And they even said, if you've got a system that's applicable to our client base, and we don't have an API, we'll create one, put it on the marketplace, and now we've added to our reach. So I think that's that model would serve well in a lot of areas.
I was just going to say, to your last point there, what I'm noticing is I'm having these conversations with my vendors because in the legal tech space, there's basically a handful of vendors. It sounds similar to, to your situation. And they're kind of making these acquisitions, trying to build a platform. And they're trying to sell us on the whole platform, right? But we don't want the whole platform. We want the interoperability. So having those conversations and saying, look, you're going to be more attractive to us if you are interoperable, you have the APIs, you play nice with other systems. It's not going to attract us if all you're trying to do is get us onto one platform where we're going to now have to sacrifice on feature functionality in other areas. And of course, all the vendors want this. They want you to be tied to their platform for years, right? And again, we don't want that. So
I agree. The more that companies are trying to force you into that, it's like, do one thing, do it really well.
Right.
And then just play nice with somebody else who does their one thing well.
Exactly.
And play nice together. I agree. So what are the key roles needed in IT to build a composable organization?
So I think there are two critical roles needed in the organization. The first is an enterprise architect. You have to have a really strong enterprise architect who can oversee all of these systems, right, at the 50,000-foot level. They understand how they're all going to work together, as well as have the business understanding of the domain, so they know where the value is, what the value drivers are, and they can architect the system that way. The second key role is the one I mentioned, which is that business partner role, right, for each kind of domain. You have to have, I think, that role to be tightly integrated with your business. They need to understand not only technology, but they have to have a knowledge of the domain area to be successful.
Yeah, no, fully aligned. I think those are the two key roles. And as you said, it's the understanding of the business. In some cases, we all see the IT team that is working with the business most probably knows about the process in and out because they have worked with it than the business itself, right? And that is key because you're not, again, giving a technology solution, you're giving a total business solution to them. And having that knowledge in those types of roles will definitely help.
I agree with that. The enterprise architecture is just incredibly important. What I'm working towards is having each one of our business units have that subject matter expert that understands enough about the technology that can interface with the enterprise architects, so they can work together in a partnership. So I think embedding, in my view, embedding that kind of capability in the business to complement the enterprise architects is real important.
Now, I come from a much smaller sized organization, so I'm the odd man out here. I come from mid-size, so we've got a little less than 1,000 people in the company, even though we have 63 clinics. To me, the business units are really good at identifying the software that they need. It's usually SaaS, right? And identifying the software they need for their business purpose. The role I play in that is more of a security role, right? It's vetting out the vendor and such like. I had my digital marketing guy want to do kind of an email, something like what SurveyMonkey does, but it was different. He had some things he liked about this particular system. And I said, well, I'll need to do a security assessment on them. Well, they're out of the Ukraine, and their security assessment did not come back very clean, and they weren't really very tight, and it made me very nervous. But I just went to the, when he asked for the funds to buy this, I just said, here's my assessment of it from a security point of view. I give him about a C minus, but it's up to y'all. I mean, to decide whether that's a risk you want to take as a business. And, and here's my concerns. And they said, it actually felt pretty good because they said, Lisa, you have been harping on security, security, security. Why would we go with somebody from the Ukraine? Certainly there's somebody here who can do the same thing. So at least I felt like I was making a difference in the culture, that they had that mindset. And we did. We found another one that did it just as well, who came very clean in terms of their security assessment. So from my point of view, is they pulled together these building blocks that fit the different needs. And again, a small company, you can do this more easily. My role is much more security and vetting out the vendor. So I think that's an important role too.
To your point, I think in general, the IT organization has become an influencer than just a partner in many ways too. We are influencing the organization through training, through awareness, through marketing campaigns. And this is not a one day we change this, right? This happens over time. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have made that decision in one day. You've done most probably right. Over time, multiple types of things. So yeah. It's an influence. And at that point, it's almost like their idea. It's not your idea, it's right. Their idea that kind of came across.
And I never said, no, you can't go with that guy. I said, here's the risk. Here's the risk to the business if you go that way. Here are my concerns, but ultimately you've got to make that decision. So, yeah, and I am glad they decided that way. They made me very nervous.
Can I make one more comment?
Absolutely.
So one of the key things that my IT business partners play in that exact scenario, so I have one that works with both marketing and HR, and what they do is when marketing comes and says, we want XYZ product, they actually go out and assess the marketplace. They look and see, okay, well, what do we have internally here? Where are the gaps? They do all of that. We do, to your point, we provide the guardrails. We capture the requirements. We absolutely will say no if it's not secure. We have a huge cyber practice, so meaning our cyber attorneys. So we would not want to be on the receiving end of a breach. So. But we do bring an extra service, if you will, to the table in terms of, well, here's the marketplace, and these are the other, products that we see out there. And we leverage, Gartner and other tools for that. So.
I agree. We do that when asked. When asked, we do it. For our radiology company that reads our x-rays, they The business isn't happy with them. IT isn't happy with them. They've got a lot of issues, and the business wants off of them. And so they said, can you go out and find us our options? Make sure they meet your needs from an IT point of view, and then let us look at them and make a decision. So they wanted me to vet them out first, present them with some options, and then choose. So it depends on whether they want to do the search themselves or whether they want me to do it for them, right? So how is this concept of composability driving digital transformation in your companies?
Digital transformation, again, I think we've all been doing that for a long time. The technologies have come, a lot more options again in terms of technologies and stuff. And before that, we have to ask ourselves, what is digital transformation? It's almost everything we do today is digital, and moving from paperless, the automation, the reporting, the data, all that is kind of digital. And as we kind of discussed just now, it's just understanding our need and seeing how we are addressing it. Are we still, in the medical device industry, in the healthcare industry, there are still a lot of paper processes, right? How can we move those paper processes to digital? Because there's a really good book by Eric Topol, Patient Will See You Now. It's one of the books. It's usually you go to a physician will see you now. This is the reverse of saying patient will see you now. It's almost like patients getting that feel and the power with the data. It's one of those areas, just on a tangent here, but one of the key areas today as patients, if you think about it, we don't own our data. We have to go to physician to ask permission to get our data, even today, right? It's all these things, but how do you transform that journey? How do you get to that journey so that all these processes go there is a question that we have to ask, and composability helps that because you take it into smaller chunks. You say, okay, today as part of Dexcom or Abbott or something, you have a glucometer live all the time, you can see your glucose results, right? You can see your results all the time. So you're making progress one step at a time, and that's all it is. That's how you kind of get to it, I think, in my mind.
In terms of driving digital transformation, I think each company, each industry has a different rate of change on that. I know in our industry, it's incredibly mature. Understanding from a business standpoint what's important to our business and trying to align with those things to drive this digital transformation is really what we're trying to do in terms of composability. So just giving an example, our operating units are all have this operational excellence banner that they have, and then under that there are other components to that. For example, the reliability would be one. Well, that reliability can be implemented multiple different ways. Some of it is through engineering changes, some of it is through business processes and procedures. The IT portion of that is trying to figure out what can we do to align with this particular initiative to help them with their reliability. And that could be anything from the connected worker, so actually delivering mobile tools that are capable of existing in a very harsh environment, that they're intrinsically safe, but takes that paper out and digitizes things as an operator is at a piece of equipment or doing their rounds, or they need to do a work permit, or they need to put together an management of change. So to me, that kind of breaks it down from the high level to the low level, and what IT's role is in that. Trying to align with those major initiatives of your organization, and then bring digital transformation that helps them achieve that and really demonstrates some value, because that's, I'm sure in everybody's industry, but even more so in a margin-based industry, delivering value is very key. I mean, you've got your cost, but you've got to have that value proposition. Otherwise, there's other initiatives that may be better suited. So.
I would just add that composability is helping driving digital transformation by allowing it to be more seamless for us to run multiple different cloud and SaaS applications, right? So the value of SaaS is you get something up and running quickly. You aren't managing the infrastructure. In the past, you would be concerned about how am I going to integrate this system over here with my 5 other systems and bring this data together. The composability architecture is what's allowing us to do that.
So has anybody started breaking down these monolithic ERP systems yet? And have you had any successes?
Yeah, I think from an ERP system perspective, it's based on the need, especially for companies like us who are in so many different countries. You have to look at not just, okay, I'm just going to put it on one ERP system or anything. You have to look at the country needs, the specific business needs in that country, and then take a federated approach where possible, and then kind of do it. So that's been our case, and we've kind of working through that model. In some cases, it makes sense to have standards. So is there one answer that you have to go with one ERP or not? There is no one answer. You have to figure out what works for you, where is the right solution for you, and then kind of take that approach. So.
Yeah, we're at the very beginning of that journey. As I said, in the center for us is the large ERP system that really does everything from order to cash, procure to pay, all of the accounting functions, payroll, the whole bit. And, in the 90s when we implemented those, that was kind of the thought and the idea. I think as we move today and the architecture that I certainly am leaning towards is more cloud solutions are best in breed. The very point, the company wasn't like the big ERP companies that tried to be all things to all people. These companies can specialize and be best of breed in human capital management or enterprise asset management or energy trade risk management. I mean, all of their energy, their focus, their knowledge is in those components. And so we're starting to see pieces of that were in our ERP being pulled out of our ERP. And the challenge that we're really facing is this interoperability, this integration. I'm old enough with the white hair and everything to remember the mainframe days where we had all these disparate systems, and you had 5 vendor masters and 6 customer masters, and you ran these jobs overnight, and you created all these reconciliation processes, and it was all about this very confusing data. The ERPs, to a degree, solved that. The composability, best-of-breed kind of cloud-based solutions, if we've got to take care that we don't recreate the things from the past. And so having that interoperability, I think, is very important and very key.
You can take some guidance from healthcare on how to do that. Go ahead.
Well, I was probably going to repeat something I already said, but in legal tech, there are about 5 or 6 firms that have sort of started out with kind of differentiated capabilities and then started adding other products to their portfolio. And so finance systems, time entry systems, and then some that are very legal specific, like matter management, document management, et cetera. And so what we're looking to do is, instead of aligning on one platform, we've got kind of this Venn diagram mesh we've created with, okay, what are the capabilities that we've mapped? What do we feel are those best in breed products? And okay, how can we leverage this idea of composable architecture to build what we want in terms of our comprehensive platform, without having to align with one big vendor platform.
Great. So before I get to the final questions, does anybody out there have any questions or comments or thoughts on this subject? Yes, ma'am.
So Joe, I want to ask you, so do you think that some of the functions are ready for prime time, that have solutions that are ready for prime time?
I definitely think that that is something as initiatives come up that we are looking at. We're not really, I don't have an initiative to push everything to the cloud. I have an initiative to deliver value to my business. If the best fit for purpose solution is an on-premise solution and it's going to meet our goals, deliver good value for the cost structure, then that's the decision that we will make. Likewise, if it's a cloud-based solution, that will be the decision that we make. So I know a lot of companies, they come up with a cloud strategy, and I'm more about delivering value and business function and things that are fit for purpose than I am trying to let the technology drive what I deliver to the business, if that makes sense.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I have a bit of skepticism. As a 40-year practitioner, I hear elements of just sliding up and down the continuum of consolidated large solutions versus best of breed, right? So I guess my question is, do you think that this composability concept is IT's response to the more sophisticated user? Because our users today, our business partners, they're building their own solutions in their homes for everything. So is that some of what's driving our movement?
I can answer. My personal thought is, in some sense, yes. Because again, my history in the past at a big oil and gas firm, any business partner that came to us, we were like, oh, does SAP do that? Okay, well now you got to use that. And they weren't happy, right? And so it didn't have the user interface they wanted. It didn't do everything they wanted. We tried to make it work. They hated it. But at the end of the day, our response was, well, we've got to leverage our investment, our large investment in this system. So I think that is it to a large extent.
I think it is much also about SaaS applications and the fact that any department can stand up their own application. They don't have to come through IT, right? And if we're going to continue to support the business and what they need, they're driving it in that direction. They weren't able to before. But Joe is also right. We don't want to go back to the past where we have all these disparate systems that can't talk to one another. But there's so much more technology in terms of APIs and such like than existed back then, that as long as the vendors, I guess you got to start with the customer, right? As long as the customer is pushing the vendors to play nice with other vendors, and no, I'm not going to take your overall offering because you don't do that as well as that guy. I'll take this because you should do that. And as long as we keep pushing those vendors, it's not hard today to bring that data, that interoperability, like it was in the past. So I think it is it's our customers, the operations that are driving this, and I think it's up to us to go with them, because that's our job, is to enable them, but then avoid the pitfalls and to say, okay, I know where this could lead. I've been there, done that 40 years ago. Don't want to do that one again. So yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I would echo, I think you're spot on. The user community is much more tech savvy than they once were, many times more. So for the last 10 years or so, we've really been trying to pivot to a environment where we empower what I call the citizen developer. We're providing the tools, the modeling tools, and the technical know-how to the subject matter experts in the business and letting them develop their own thing. So it's a little bit of a different philosophy, and I've been in several discussions, and there's two kind of camps when it comes to data analytics. There's one that IT hires and has all of these data scientists, or there's the one where the data scientists are embedded in the business units, and that's the one that I subscribe to. Again, if I go back to my example of reliability, the last thing I need is for a data scientist to be analyzing all this rotating equipment and then go back to a 25-year mechanical engineer and say, well, this is what's wrong with how you're managing your assets. It's just not going to play well. What's better is if they can do it. If I've given them and empowered them to develop what they need, then they can see it and perform the analysis and even shape their solution specifically to their needs. So I think you're spot on. Yeah.
Until we call them shadow IT and move them into IT, right?
That's a domain function. I think you're absolutely right. That's a domain function. That is not an IT function.
It's at the two levels that you have to think. Business users are getting tech savvy, and tech people are getting business savvy. And it's a balance in between at the end of the day. And there are two things we have to take into consideration. One is establishing foundation. When I say establishing foundation, it's not just building huge ERP system or anything like that. But what does that foundation mean? But foundation is really key. Because if everyone is collecting data, and then the second part is the data. So if the foundation is not right, everyone is collecting data differently, and the meaning of that is completely different. And the analysis that the business is going to do is not going to be meaningful. Because who is owning that data collection process? Who is building that foundation so that when someone else is analyzing, there is a meaningful story that comes out of it? That is key. With the power we have, we can ask lots of questions, but the answers that are coming out of that question, are we questioning those answers to make sure, is that fair? Did we take all the things, like I think in the earlier we were talking, in one of the sessions, they were talking about signal and noise. Are we identifying the right signals, or are we getting carried away with the noise? That is super key in kind of establishing it. And that's where I think as leaders, we have to constantly correct ourselves to make sure, do we have the right foundation? What does that mean? In some cases, that is a big ERP system across, and we have to do it. It's really important. In some cases, it's a completely federated approach, but where it does fit what is something, I think it's based on the scenario.
That's something we haven't actually talked a lot about, is as you get all of these different systems out there, even if they do talk to one another, how do you then bring that data together into something meaningful, right? That's a problem I'm facing right now, in that we do have all these, each department, and it ends up in our finance department having to pull from this system and this system and this system to know whether a clinic is profitable or not. She's got like 4 different systems, and she's got no way of doing that. And I'm trying to help solve that problem with her right now. So that's one downside of this that we haven't really talked about. Any thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, to me, it kind of echoes what we've been talking about in terms of interoperability and making sure that that data is all consistent. I think, on the business side, there's certainly some data governance that need to be put in place, and an understanding. In our case, we've actually, IT has been the initiator of this. but the chair is a person in the business, and all of the stakeholders in the business make up the committee. IT attends, but it's really theirs. We're more of a data custodian, and they're more of the governance folks. So I think it starts with that. And then you can dovetail that into different type of solutions. You know, there's MuleSoft that's out there, there's Dell Boomi that's out there, and some of those technologies that we have started using, they take a life of their own as well. You know, the business will sometimes look at cloud-based solution, it needs to integrate over here, and oh, we don't need IT until it comes time to start mapping this data from one system to the next, and then you're writing SAML code and all kinds of very intricate business processes in the data transformation. So to me, you know, when I've been speaking about the interoperability, the orchestration of it all, that's what I'm talking about. And I think that that's going to be the difficulty. But I'm full support of the journey. I think when we crack that nut, we're really going to have something of value. Yeah.
So final question for the panel. How does a business drive a culture of interoperability, of composability?
Well, again, and I know I'm probably repeating myself here, but to me, it's aligning to each one of my business units' major initiatives and recognizing that those initiatives are going to have components for them to achieve that are going to be outside of IT, engineering changes, equipment manufacturers and things that they do there. But then I'm part of that. I'm one of the components, so to speak, to help them with the data, information, decision making, and those types of systems that can help them make good decisions. So to me, that's how we align with that. We're one of those interchangeable modules, you know, what we deliver in IT.
So is IT driving it, the culture, or is by being willing to do that, or does the business drive the culture down to IT?
I think the business has to drive that culture. I really do. And I think continuing to get your business leaders, and many business leaders today are very tech savvy. You know, it's one of the interesting ideas that we've heard over the years that CIOs and IT leaders need to speak the language of the business. If you think about business leaders, engineers, they send them to school so that they can learn some finance, the finance that they need to have in their organizations, that knowledge. I think that knowledge on the technology side needs to be part of that business education as well, so that they can be the drivers of this initiative.
I think a little differently there. I think it's more IT driving that. The reason I think IT is driving is in an organization, IT is looking from above across functions. And each function, it's so important for them. They're going to come to say, this is critical. But IT having that composability view and the value proposition view for the overall company is going to ask those critical questions of individual business and cross-business discussion to kind of say, guys, let's build where the value proposition is coming. Let's prioritize, let's work that. That in turn drives, maybe we can do small thing from here from finance, small thing from here from commercial, small thing from here from operations, instead of doing one big only operations project, right? So that is how I think IT, and your point of enterprise architect, takes a critical role in that discussion, because that role and the business partner are bringing these people to the table to have that discussion on a regular basis, actually.
Yeah, actually, I tend to agree. Actually, I would say IT can also almost be the composer, right, between the different groups, right? So we're looking across, we are in some cases, we are identifying opportunities for sharing of data and doing different analysis.
I think I tend to agree with the two of you that even though it's being driven by the user in terms of the need for composability, how you orchestrate that has got to come from IT, and how IT can help them put the pieces together to serve their business need the best. Again, you have to understand the business, you have to be part of it, and work with them, whether you do or in a larger organization, you've got people embedded in the business, if you will, that are going to help design that overall big picture to make sure that the interoperability is there, the data governance is there, and that these different pieces come together in the best way, I guess I would say.
So I've always marched to the beat of a different drummer, and you can see that once again I'm doing that here as well. So I think it may be different for each business and each culture. Yeah.
I think it's the type of business you're in, and I think it's the size of business you're in. I think all of those things make it a little different. So any final words y'all want to share before we end? We said it all. Any final questions? Nothing? Okay, well then thank you very much for your attendance today. Appreciate it. And thank y'all for being here.